Yes, character design. It's one of my favorite things to do in art. It's also something I don't do enough. So today, we're going to design an OC. Unlike most artists, my approach is more straightforward. I have an image in my head ready and draw what it should resemble right away. I suppose it should be something I should practice, and that's putting together more concepts, more variations of the character, and also some compositions when it comes to the final illustration. Composition is especially important in artwork to make things more interesting and dynamic. I seem to skip all that and go straight to the final illustration, which is bad. You guys should not skip doing that if you want to improve. So don't do as I do in this instance, and do what I say instead. Anyway, getting back to my design. I had a brain fart while taking a shower, and I thought, what about a new OC? And this time it'll be someone unrelated to any fandom in particular. So I went with an elf who marries a dwarf, and their kid takes over the family blacksmithing business. And then my dear Delph, Drace, was born. My idea for her is a simple one. She grows up learning how to work with tools from her mother, who is a rough and toughed-out dwarf. Her father, an elf ranger, teaches her how to use a bow and arrow. Along with that knowledge, Drace learns how to craft her own weapons. I imagine her to be very happy-go-lucky and, of course, very positive about life. I think this idea is rather neat, as you don't see many races where a human isn't involved in the mix. So the idea of a dwarf and an elf sounded pretty neat, I think. Her design isn't overly flashy as she's a blacksmith. Her clothing has some tears and cuts with some oil spills from working with metal and all other types of material. I also drew her with some scars, cause I imagine that there can be some accidents involved when working with different materials at the forge. This, of course, doesn't bother her, cause she's proud to work at the business with her mum. So how I approached this was simple. I made a reference sheet with base colors, a basic pose, and some headshots turned sideways, and a back-end view of her head. She has an updo with her hair, and the bun is quite fluffy. I do like this kind of hairstyle a lot. She has some bangs covering her forehead with small fringes at the side. Since she is a dwarf, her build is much shorter and more stout in general. Due to her working with metal and many heavy objects, she gained a bit of muscle. Overall, she enjoys food and especially ale or beer after a hard day's work. She wears an apron with a tool belt attached and some plain green shirt with dark gray pants. She has typical brown leather boots for her feet and thick leather gloves on her hands. She also has 3 earrings in her ears, one she forged herself, by the way. Her eyes can widen when she's excited, but most of the time remains closed or squinted from the brightness of the light from the forge. Overall, she's a happy Delph, always listening to her customers attentively and getting them exactly what they need. Her family business has been running for many generations, so it's very trusted between travelers and the village alike. She also loves hearing stories from her customers since she works at the business most of the time and also enjoys baking, often giving a slice of something sweet or savory with every piece of equipment she sells, or fixes up to show her appreciation. Next, we have an illustration piece where I use the reference sheet that we made. I'm thinking that she's going to be up front of the forge smiling widely while holding up a set of goggles. She'll stand proudly while we gaze up at her from an angle below, signifying to the viewer her importance. The focus will be on her as we add the perspective and do the sketch. This is the first video where I discuss how I make a character, so bear with me if it seems a little messy. I would also like to add that if you've come this far in the video, consider subscribing and comment down your thoughts on this artwork. Next, we have the line art, which is usually my favorite part of the process. I love thick black lines and don't often like to color in line work unless I absolutely feel like I need to. Here we didn't need to, honestly. We then have the shadows, my least favorite part, since I struggle heavily with implementing them correctly. I'm still figuring out how I like to do shading techniques, like using edge control where soft and hard shadows mesh up together. Next, we'll color in the shadows, a bit with a cool steel blue to contrast the warm orange red. We'll add some highlights here and there, and then we'll work on a little forge in the back. It's not the greatest forge, but it'll do the trick since that's not the focus of this piece. After adding a bit of shading and then highlighting where the fire will be and where the heat is coming from, we'll add some rim lights. The fire is behind her, so we'll add a little bit of shine behind her. Adding some Gaussian blur to the background for a gradient, we'll touch it up with some screen tones in the shadowy areas and in the back a little bit. And we are basically done! So here's our new OC, Drace the Blacksmith Delph. Thank you guys for joining me today, and also please check out my VGen if you're interested in commissions. Take care, stay safe, and see you in the next one. Ciao!